transformation, which means that what we had hoped to achieve as humanity progress has become a distant dream, lasting peace and, beyond that, perpetual peace. Talking about peace is not easy. For the sake of consistency in my research, I have worked on peace from three perspectives. First one, the historical philosophical. The second, the phenomenological. And the third, the institutional. In a brief methodological note, a historical philosophical perspective is dedicated to analyzing the factors and the elements that have created and justified the culture of war and fear as the natural state of human relation, whose peace is only a temporary condition between wars, as a reality of peoples and states, even before they exist in fact and in law. In this context, we speak of the violent nature of human beings, the right to war and peace, the search for perpetual peace, and peace as a right. The phenomenological perspective recognizes peace as a phenomenon distinct from war and a human value that must be stimulated by positive and active social practices in order to raise conscience for a peaceful life in society, whose conflicts must be resolved through dialogue inspired by respect between equals, tolerance, and a spirit of cooperation, understood as the recognition that each of us is responsible for everyone and everything. From this perspective, we are talking about building an awareness for peace and of peace and no violence as a replacement for the culture of war. The institutional perspective, the third level, on the other hand, focuses on the study and analysis of international political legal means in the macroeconomic and social global sphere, which allow us to observe how the international community is moving forward by states and peoples in the quest to overcome the culture of war and violence that legitimizes, on the one hand, policies justified by fear, and on the other hand, global economic control through practices that are of a little use to sustainable development. It is from this third perspective that I have proposed this conference, taking as its start point the discourse of the United Nations General Assembly as centering in its resolutions, and restricted to the movement towards recognizing that peace is the requirement for the full enjoyment of human rights for all. Here we begin our reflection on the actual phase of the research by moving on to the current phase of the United Nations peace system, introduced by Resolution 216 from 77 session that follows the Resolution 170 from the 73 session and renewed by Resolution 177 from the 75 session, both on the United Nations General Assembly. Following the logic of the argument based on the formation of the awareness for peace and considering democracy as the current point of reflection, we return to the ideologies proposed on the documents called by the 2005 World Summit outcome, resolution number 1 of the 16 period of sessions, and the other, Education for Democracy, resolution number 8 of the 71 session, which allow us to perceive the current sense of democracy justified on internal values and identities proper to each people and raises education to the quality of fundamental for democracy. Moreover, such reflection contributes to the understanding of the with the people, actual and contemporary discussion, as well as bringing liberal and liberal democracies closer to dialogue, the result of the which of the overcoming of a new Cold War justified in political and legal values that have tended to replace the old Cold War justified in political and in economic values. The convergence point is simple. The conference was intended to stimulate the discussion about peace, democracy, and education in double perspective. Firstly, an approach that may link both in the same theoretical line. And next, a practical but hypothetical proposal about how the education can contribute with reconstruction of the concept of democracy dedicated to strengthening awareness for peace. Summarily, the point of reflection was to contribute with the practical transposition of education as a pillar of democracy that qualifies the democratic constitutionalism justified in the objective of forming awareness for peace that is fundamental core of the culture of peace in the face of internal resistance of the host people about immigrants, especially forced ones, which introduced the discourse of the new nationalist appeal at the limit of the United Nations General Assembly resolution. Finally, it is possible to affirm in a triple perspective that peace should be built in person's mind. Um, so, democratic constitutionalism must respect the national identities, including the respect to immigrants as a human being, and the proposal of education system focus in the values of the work and the respect among the equals as the fundamentals to the intercultural mediation targeting the social inclusion can contribute in practice with problem solution of the forced immigration issue inside of democratic constitutionalism by the peace awareness problem in thesis. The real proposal it is to make possible to elevate peace as a constitutional hermeneutic principle based on the predisposition to control hostilities by cooperation between people and states, through tolerance, dialogue, and respect among the equals, beside other criteria and requirements that inform the culture of the peace. The intellectual comfort point comes from the observation that principles currently recognized as indispensable to the stability of modern constitutions were also born out of the change of social, political, and legal paradigm, and have proven themselves in history as acceptable for access to legal security and access to fundamental rights, for example, human dignity, equality, freedom, democracy, sovereignty, separation of powers. For us, the time has come for peace. Peace in legal terms, peace in material protection, and constitutional principles. Thank you, DJ, dear colleagues, for your attention and the opportunity.
Alex, thank you very much. So maybe, I don't know, do you have enough time to be here on the session to the end, but maybe we have 2-3 minutes for questions, comments, or discussion.
Sure.
Someone, okay?
Okay.
Someone would like to add something or give comments or question to Alex? So maybe this is a privilege of a moderator that I can ask, because it's so Alex. I'm sorry. The idea of peace, education, and democracy, it's beautiful, really beautiful. But when you can see on temporary world, so we can see what's happening in Ukraine, in Israel, in many some other place in the world. Do you believe that United Nations are still have some tools to solve these problems, of we need the new concept of United Nations, because I'm sure that now peace education and democracy. This is, I agree with you that this is the most beautiful thing which we need, which people in the world need. So, do you think that United Nations organizations is still have the possibility to control this situation in the world?
Okay, thank you, DJ, for your consideration in your kindly words. I think that we are in progress. This is not a matter or a question that had be resolved only by United Nations, but for all of one. So all the states, all the people. This is a question that we need to think and we need to work to get it. So peace should be discussed, should be talked about, should be present as a conscience, not a tension, not a bad word, but a good word. To live in harmony, to live in respect, to live together, but without boundaries. That's the first principle. We need to see in each one um, a human being, the progress, the humankind. So this is a dream, it's true, but this is a dream that can be constructed, that can be built in a future not longer.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm sorry, but this is, my perspective, country. Okay, now we are exactly on the western border of Poland. I can see through the window Germany, but I mean also about our eastern border where there is a war. Yeah, so in our neighbor is a hot war, not a cold war. Yeah, so it's this is my reason why I ask you. However, thank you very much for your presentation and answer. Okay, any other questions, comments? No? Okay, yeah. For Leonid, yeah?
Yeah, thank you very
Okay.
much. Are you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alice, for your presentation. My question probably will be more specifically about what kind of education, because somehow we have already in our university around the world education about human rights. If it's legal sphere, it should be international humanitarian law, which describe how to build this world and so on and so on. Are you talking also about non-formal education too, or not? And it's interesting how you're looking for those part of education as well. And thank you.
Thank you for your question. Excellent. This is the center point. Firstly, nice to meet you. When I talk about education, it is the complex system. The complex system that means instruction, that means respect, that means knowledge, that means practice, that means theory. So this is a complex form to construct the human beings. So this is a kind of system, the system of built a new relationship. So there is no limits. There is no how can I say we can go on. We can develop us as just one word. This is a complex system that involves instruction, knowledge, respect, commitment, and all the positive values. Okay.
Thank you very much, Alex. Once again, thank you for your inspiring speech. And now we can jump from Lisbon, as I guess, to Madrid, because there is Oscar. So once again, welcome in Slubice. I think that very soon we will meet here, because this is a beautiful place, very symbolic place. So friendship between Poland and Germany. So I think that invitation is still open. So Oscar, let's jump to your presentation, to your topic, some comments on Greco report of Spain 2022 in respect of members of parliament, judges and prosecutors, okay? Oscar, the floor is yours, and the internet space.
Thank you very
Sorry,
much.
one more explanation, that because we have started recorded this session, because I hope that we can use this your speeches on our social media. Yeah, it is possible. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. For me, it's a great opportunity to be here today with all of you. Some of you are colleagues, some of you are friends. This opportunity to join this conference, that it's an important conference in the Polish Academy, the Slubice conference. I hope one day I will be in person. I hope. I have this hope, and it will be a great honor for me. And yes, and from Buenos Aires, we are meeting virtually all the people from the board in different occasions, and I think it's a all are great opportunities. Today, I would like to talk about anti-corruption policies and something that it's a European issue. I am going to focus in Spain, but could be also an issue, something similar, not exactly the same, but something similar, because there is a Greco report on Poland and there is a Greco report on Hungary. But I am going to focus on Spain, and I am going to share a presentation and I am going to explain this presentation. Okay, well, Greco is a body of the Council of Europe specialized in anti-corruption policies. This Greco group is always making some reports on different countries and making some reports in, for example, the question of separation of powers, checks and balances. This is a common problem between Poland. I think it was a common problem between Poland and Spain. And I could like to focus in 3-4 problems that this report has denounced of the current situation in Spain. The first question is the lobbyists and parliament. The Greco recommended some rules on this situation, and is very interesting because it's a very difficult problem, because Council of Europe Greco group aims to introduce some transparency in the legislators' activities. For example, there is a code of conduct of the parliament that it's the only regulation, but there is no legal regulation. And there was an agreement to publish the institutional agendas of the parliamentarians, but only less than half of these parliamentarians published these institutional agendas. This means lobbyists are in the dark, or in the half dark in Spain. And this is not good for transparency policies, and this is not good for anti-corruption policies. The second topic is a very important topic. This is a European issue nowadays, is the problem with the General Council of the Judiciary. This is the body who nominates the judges. This body is elected by parliament, by political parties, and they required an agreement between the two main political parties, the Socialist Party and the Popular Party. They requires a strong majority of parliament. The problem is 5 years ago, there is no agreement to renovate this General Council of the Judiciary. And the situation is chaotic, and the Socialist Party and the Popular Party has required to the European Commission to be an intermediary between the government and the opposition in order to arrive to an agreement to a new body, and to arrive to an agreement to change the rules to elect this judiciary body, governing judiciary body. This is very interesting because there are two conceptions of democracy and the role of the judiciary. And so some people consider that this governing judiciary body should be elected only by members of parliament and only for political quotas. And the other view, that it's the view of the European Commission and the Popular Party, is the view that the half of the judiciary governing body should be elected by the own judges, and half should be elected by the political parties. And this is a different understanding of checks and balances and different understanding of separation of powers. And there are some philosophical theories behind constitutionalism, neo-constitutionalism, what is justice, who should have the last word in a democracy, the people or the judge, the justice, how we elect the judges in a democracy. Okay, these are great questions, difficult questions, but now are at stake. Now are the great debate in Spain. And yesterday, there was a meeting between the European Commissioner of Justice and one representative, one minister of the government, and one member of the opposition in order to arrive to an agreement, in order to change the rules to elect this governing body, and in order to arrive to an agreement for the composition of this governing body. Is a great, great problem. Okay. Another issue is the selection of the prosecutor general. In Spain, the prosecutor general is depending of the Ministry of Justice, and there are always in the Greco report some criticisms because this prosecutor general is not independent. And generally speaking, the prosecutors in Spain has a hierarchical relationship, and they are not so independent. They have to defend legality, but in the interpretation of what is legality sometimes is imposed by the prosecutor general that it's nominated by the government. And this is also against separation of powers. This is also against checks and balances. And okay, in this point, the Greco report says that there is a problem with the election of the prosecutor general and the autonomy of the prosecutor general, and this is something that has been denounced in several Greco reports during the years. Also, the question of the internal autonomy of the prosecutors. Finally, the last issue that we are going to talk is about the regulatory framework for disciplinary matters in the prosecutor service. And in this case, there are some advances. There is some new regulations that establish some disciplinary measures for the prosecutors. And there are some sanctions for wrongful actions for the prosecutors. Well, final remarks. The rule of law is a European issue. I imagine that the Polish Greco report has some problems also about the checks and balances and the separation of powers. Um, Also, there is a question about judicial independence and judicial corruption. It's interesting because judicial corruption could be political judicial corruption or criminal judicial corruption. The political judicial corruption is the influence of the politicians in the judge. And this is a type of corruption. If the politicians influence the judge, this is judicial corruption. And in Spain, this type of corruption is common. The other type of corruption, judicial criminal corruption, is not denounced. There is no famous cases. Well, there are some, but few famous cases of judicial criminal corruption when there is some bribes for judges and these type of cases. But judicial political corruption is so common in Spain. It's everyday corruption in Spain. And finally, there is an interpretation about what is a constitution, what is democracy. For some people, democracy should prevail in any case, and for some people, constitution should prevail in some cases. And the judges are the guardians of the constitution in front of the majorities, of the populist majorities. And I think we can understand that the judge could be the guardians of the constitution or the guardians of the rights of the minorities in front of the majorities, in front of the populist majorities, in front of the democracy. However, it's also possible to say that the majority should govern, should rule, and the majority should have the last word in legal and political issues, because this is a democracy. And the contra-majoritarian objection says that the judges represent the elite. The judges represent few people with power. If I have to define myself, which I prefer, I am in favor of the first idea, of the idea that the judge defends the constitution and defends the rights of the minorities. However, this idea of the contra-majoritarian view of the judges and this idea of the democracy should have the last word, it's also very popular in some scholars, and also is very popular in the politicians in different countries. Okay, well, thank you very much. For me, it has been very interesting to address this speech today with you. And well, I open if you have any questions or.
Oscar, thank you very much for your expressive speech. So this topic is also very important in Poland because last 8 years, ruling party Law and Justice completely destroyed the judiciary system in Poland. For example, the General Council of Judiciary, and they decided that majority in this body had politicians, not judges, politicians. And we have some European courts decision. I mean about European Court of Human Rights, but also European Court in Luxembourg, that this is not European court with such judges, yeah, who are nominated by this body when the politicians have a majority. So this is against European values. So we have such decisions. And for example, I'm a legal advisor, and when I have a case, when I have such neo judge in court, so this is a reason why I can appeal to the higher court. The same history was with Prosecutor General. Because Law and Justice Party decided 80 years that it was Minister of Justice. Before it was separate independent body. Yeah. Now the new minister, after the autumn election in Poland, decided that we will back to the situation before 2015. So it will be the office of Prosecutor General. It will be the independent body. Yeah. So here we have experiences in Poland, unfortunately very bad experiences. So maybe in this discussion in Spain, it will be fruitful and helpful. Yeah, the outcomes from the situation in Poland.
Well, I am considering the possibility. There is another question.
Yeah,
I am considering the possibility. JJ, I don't know. Maybe we can publish an article together about this topic, or maybe
Sure.
a chapter for some of our books about this topic between Spain and Poland, and this question of the separation of powers.
Excellent, excellent. However, we have one more question.
Yeah, we in Germany, we have different chambers of the Court of Justice, and sometimes they have different opinions. So do we have any example like this in Spain, and what do you do in this case?
In what case specify?
The judgment, for instance, in budget affairs is different. From one chamber made a judgment, let's say 5 years ago, and now they have another judgment from another chamber of the Constitutional Court, which is different, and they differ from each other, and that's quite difficult to judge for the politics in the future.
Okay. Well, in our system, we have the judiciary, that it's the Supreme Court, and we have the Constitutional Court, that is not the judiciary. It's only for the guarantees of the fundamental rights and only for the constitutionality of the rules. Is different. It's not law. In the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court has the obligation to make law coherent. This means that if there is some low instance court that has a ruling and another court, another different ruling, the Supreme Court have to unify the doctrine, unify the criteria of the rulings in Spain. And this is the Supreme Court, and there are different chambers of the Supreme Court. And in the Constitutional Court, also there are different chambers, but finally, the decision is in the hands of the president. This means that there are 12 members of the Constitutional Court, and if the majority is 6-6, the last decision is the qualified vote of the president. And well, there are some cases in which these are, but also the Constitutional Court is elected by the constitutional organs, that the constitutional organs are the government, the judiciary, the parliament, and these are according to political quotas. We had a vice president in Spain, a socialist vice president in the 80s, that said that Montesquieu has died. Montesquieu, the inventor of the separation of power, has died because the politicians control the judiciary. And now we have a collapse because for 10 years we have the same governing judiciary body. And now we are collapsed, and we are asking to the European Commission to do the intermediary, to be intermediary between the opposition and the government, because there is no dialogue. And okay, well, I think it's something that it's good to know from the European point of view.
Okay, thank you very much, Oscar. Who else? No. Okay, Leonid.
Yeah, a very short question, and thank you very much for your presentation. If I allowed to continue a question from my colleague from Germany, if I understand, for all European countries, or not all European countries, there is one additional institute on international level. It's called like Venice Commission, which can comment somehow situation about rule of law in your country and also constitutional law. Do you have any reaction, or I don't know, any statement from Venice Commission to the situation in Spain? What are you talking about?
You mean Willis Commission?
Venice.
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 Venice
Venice
Commission.
Commission. Yeah.
Venice Commission.
The Venice. Yeah, of course. No. No. I use the Greco. Okay, the Greco reports. I teach some classes of a course called Corruption and Accountability, and I use the Greco report of Spain of each year as part of my practice sessions. And now this is 2022, but I use the report, Greco report of Spain of 2017, 2016, and they were more criticisms, and it was and always it appeared in the newspapers. The criticism, Spain, the group specialized in corruption in Council of Europe criticizes Spain because separation of power, because this issue. And in my perspective, the Venice Commission is more theoretical, or more I don't know. It's not about exactly these type of topics. It uses more electoral all the part of elections, and these and made some reports about these elections and political freedom and all the electoral process. And but I don't know if they have made some reports about separation of powers. But I think no, is the Greco report in charge of these denounces.
So thank you very much. For the Venice, my colleague, former Prime Minister of Poland, Professor Hanna Suchocka, who is a professor on my university, she is now honor chair of this commission. So, for example, in any doubts, we can also contact with Professor Suchocka. So the moderator has sometimes some privilege, some duties, but privilege. And in both category, this is a decision, my decision, that my speech will be on the end, because we will see so what time will be on the end. So I think that after the speeches of chair-elect of RC26, former chair of RC26, now is the time for speech of Professor Ragnar Löning from European Institute in Bocholt in Germany. So once again, Professor is a legend on our university, on our faculty, because he's the beginning of the contact between our faculty with Professor dated to 1988, probably, yeah. And we can say that through a figure of Professor, it was our bridge to Europe. So this is very significant person on our university and faculty. So it's a big privilege for me to give you voice, and the floor is yours.
Thank you for your words. It's a fantastic possibility for me to speak in such a group from different countries because my topic is intercultural communication, and that's what we do at the moment. And I wanted to speak about some examples and some possibilities, but also some failures and misunderstandings in intercultural communication. Naturally, communication in the modern times is becoming more and more from everybody, not only in commerce and trade, but also in diplomacy, in politics, and naturally also in tourism. And we see here that people they try to come to other countries and they try to learn something, but very often they fail to learn something, but the prejudices become stronger and stronger. So this is a very big problem in our generation. Now, everybody has naturally an individual structure, a social character. At the same time, he is formed by his culture in his country. You as a Pole, I'm a German, you as a Spanish or Portuguese, you have a certain social character, which is formed by your tradition, by history, and so on. And also the regions are very important. For instance, here in the region, it's France, it's Silesia, which has a very strong regional character, or that's Dansk in the north also is very strong. So your individual is on the one hand, but you also have this possibility of your character. Now, how to overcome those difficulties? One possibility naturally is we are willing to overcome those difficulties. Another is to compromises with your partner you speak to. And there's also naturally the possibility of sensibility of both partners, but this is obviously in intercultural communication not enough. There is still some problems existing and you have to some knowledge have some knowledge in intercultural communication to start with. You can start, for instance, with the language. Language naturally is the normal character of communication, but there we have in the different cultures, we have different communications. Let's take silence. What does silence in a speech or in a group, when partnership talk to each other, what does it mean in different countries? When I talk in Germany, it might be a break. It might be painful to have a pause in such a speech, or in having people to talking to each other. But in other countries, it's completely different. For instance, in Japan, if you have silence in between, you have to watch the air to find out what the people are meaning. It's not only the words, but the silence also speaks to those that know about it. But I have an example of an American who went to Japan. He knew the language and he thought a decision had been made already by the words, and found out that the decision was completely different at the end because he didn't hear the sound of the silence. So that's one of the important things. Other example is, for instance, the difference of words and the sequence of words. For instance, I'm talking about an example. I read about a French lady which was very qualified, went to the United States working. And then the moderator, a few weeks later, a month later, asked the American partner how the French lady was doing. And he said, so, not exactly what we wanted to have. And then the moderator asked also the French lady what she thought. And she thought, well, it's wonderful. I have a very good relation with my American colleagues. Everything is going fine. Now, what was the collision of words? Because in America and the United States, you start always with positive terms when you want to decide about something. And the French, on the other hand, start with negative and criticizing. So the lady was cheering, oh, everything was good. At the end, there were some words critical, but she thought that the whole thing was more positive than negative. So we see completely misunderstanding of two countries, those who are speaking the same language, but the cultures were different because the French are criticizing rather seldom, speaking positive. The Americans start positive, and the main points were negative. So this is these are some of the points that make it very difficult in language. Naturally, we have everybody, and your languages also probably have different meanings for the same thing. I don't even have it in Poland, for instance, or I give the German example, for carrots. We have 5 different words. It depends on the region. They are different in the regions. Maybe in Portugal or in Spain, you have the same examples. And for instance, there were maybe misunderstandings and also misunderstandings in language. For instance, in Germany, we have a word corn, and corn means wheat. So after World War II, when the Germans didn't get enough alimentation, they asked the Americans, that they are the occupation power, why don't you send some? And they wrote corn. But corn in American is maize. That's completely different. So I remember when I was a small boy, there were ships of corn coming from the United States, and the baker and the ladies in the house didn't know what to do with corn because they expected wheat and it was corn. So also naturally in the same language and the same the natural speaker might be different. Let's take Americans and British. When an American or let's about compromise, for instance. Compromise is for the British something where everybody, well, we have to give in some points, but most of it is very positive for us. But for the Americans, it's completely different. Compromise, the word is both sides lose. So there might be a lot of difficulties arising by these, though the natural speakers, English in American and British might be completely different. Then naturally, it might be also a different interpretation. But you all know the Maastricht Treaty. There was a big discussion between John Major, Prime Minister of Great Britain, and Helmut Kohl, German Chancellor. The German Chancellor wanted to have in the Constitution, in the new European Constitution, the word federal. Because he thought in Germany, we have the federalism, we have different competences of the institutions, and this is a very positive thing. We also should introduce it into the European Union and the Constitution. And John Major was very critical about it because he knew about American history. And there are the so-called Federalist Papers, and the Federalist Papers were more centralizing the institutions, and he was against. And so they got a big dispute between the two, and they couldn't find a solution. And so they skipped the word federal and brought the word subsidiarity instead. That's what we have in the Constitution. So you see also the same natural speakers can have different points when speaking. Lacking the adaptation in language is also very important. For instance, in Berlin, we had in the 60s, we had a movement of students. They wanted to bring the ideas of Marx and Engels to the workers. So they had read the books of Marx and Engels and thought they could bring it to the worker and convince them for the ideas of Marx and Engels. But their flyers they gave them were with the words of Marx and Engels, and the workers just threw it away because they couldn't understand the words. So the impact of the idea was completely negative instead of positive. So we have same language, but different ideas about everything. Now, naturally, the problem also is, you know, that Brits, Dutch also, and Americans very shortly go from Mr. Smith, they go to you and John. This is also used in the Netherlands. But what we don't know that the Dutch, for instance, they don't want your first name in a official program. So it's not Willem Hoogstraten, but it's W. Hoogstraten instead, because I don't know the people where they come from, and they interpret, they have an interpretation of my words which are wrong. You also naturally have to know what your own, the relation to your own language, which is very important. The British and the Americans are very glad they don't have to learn other languages, which is all right, but naturally they accept African English, or they accept Indian or German accent and wording, which are very simple very often. But naturally they don't learn other languages as they should do. But the French are completely different. They are very proud of their language, and they want to have it spoken also by others in a rather good possibility. And we had, for instance, when the Europol was formed some decades ago, there were policemen from France, from England, from Britain, from, I don't know, not Britain at the beginning, but Germany, Italy, Spain, and so on. And they all agreed to speak English. That was the easiest because they didn't want to have translation all the time and they didn't have the money to do that. And also the French policemen spoke English. When the Paris ministry found out that the French policemen in Brussels or in The Hague spoke English, immediately they replaced him by somebody who only spoke French. It means we've seen those examples, how the language are seen differently. Naturally, also history is very important. Naturally, when after the war, German language was not well accepted in other countries. Going to Norway, which was an occupied country, they didn't like it, and so it was not very good. And I remember another example. We went with my family, we went to a Dutch sea resort. And in the beginning, when I rented an apartment, I spoke to the lady of the apartment. Tried to speak some Dutch. Okay. Next day, when we had some coffee to each other, the lady told me, you would better speak German, because when you speak Dutch, that reminds me of the secret security, the Gestapo of the Second World War. And now that's bad enough. But how did the people from the social security in Germany get the Dutch-speaking people? Those were kids in the 20s that were invited by Dutch farmers because they had hunger and it was better for them to stay in the Netherlands for some time, and they spoke Dutch, and the German Gestapo were looking for those and sent them to the Netherlands again. And another example I'll give how difficult wordings and also singing may be. I was with a group of African Americans and Canadians in Strasbourg in France. And we had a very good time, several weeks. We had friends visiting the Netherlands, Germany, Luxembourg, Belgium, and finally France. And we ended up in Strasbourg in a restaurant. A wonderful summer evening, opened the windows. And then at the end, the Canadians started to sing a national anthem, their national anthem. And then the Americans started to sing their national anthem. French people around in the restaurant. And then they started, I was the only German, started to sing the German national anthem. And they started with the first frame, with the first phrase, Deutschland, Deutschland über alles, which was not liked and not accepted anymore in our national anthem. So I had to stop it immediately and give a last lecture in European history about this. So, and even national anthems are sometimes very difficult. And now communication naturally is a very important point. And now you have the difference between European nations, and especially northern nations. The Dutch especially very clear in their speeches. They want to have what I say, I mean it. Also, the Germans have in a certain way, also the Scandinavians, the British, and also the Americans. So we just heard the other example that first positive and then negative naturally was a judgment. But it is difficult now to find out the difference, because when Dutchmen and French speak to each other and try to make business, and they find out that the Dutch find out that the Frenchman is not speaking so directly as he is used to, and then he will be at the end he will find out that the Frenchman is not trustworthy, and so the business is ended at this point. Also, let me come to some different Asian countries. I know a gentleman who was trying to sell something in India, and he had a very good relation to somebody in India. And he thought there would be a good deal, to make a good deal with this Indian merchant. And at the end, he found out there was no business. There were good relations, but he didn't hear the no, because some Asian countries like the Indians, the Chinese, the Japanese don't want to say no to some proposals. And that's he did not understand. So there are so many problems in also to give negative feedback. Or judgment, for instance, is quite clear. We do a negative even to a colleague in front of others who judge him, let's say criticize him, that he has problems, but they are still friends. In other countries, for instance, in France, and also in some Asian countries, it would be impossible to do that. To judge somebody in front of others and criticize him, he would not do it. And so they try to have harmony in a group while discussing. They might criticize him in just two speaking to each other, but not in common. Naturally, time out, and just a few remarks. Time is naturally a very important thing. Scandinavians, Germans more or less, the trains are never punctual in Germany, but normally the Germans have a certain possibility. They hope to be punctual in their works, and they plan ahead. This is a big problem for Germans, for instance. They are not, as the other parts of the Polish or the Dutch or the Asian, they start a common meeting, they start with some friendly words. They want to come to know each other. They don't, and the Germans come with some papers and want to start immediately. It's a big difficulty between Germans and other countries. I had this realized also in the German-Dutch relations. And for Asians, the first meeting might be impossible to start with business. Also, the Frenchmen don't like it. They have a common meal. At the end, somebody might talk about business, but not in the beginning. And we are looking at the time. That's obvious. Very curious thing, because the distance between people when speaking to each other is different. Let's say some people, Norwegian and Italian, are on the same party. They're trying to talk to each other. And the Italian wants to have the elbow distance, let's say 15 centimeters. The Norwegian is interested in the arm length. So Italian is going forward because he wants the elbow distance, and the Norwegian is going back. So there's sometimes you can see it when you have parties. You can see the Norwegian and the Italian going in circles. At the end, the Norwegian is at a wall, and then he can't stop it. Well, those are just examples of how cultural communication is difficult, and you can make failures and have problems. And what I said in the beginning, sensibility, compromise, and willingness is not enough, but you have to also to learn about the different cultures. That's why it's so important, like Erasmus, this European program for students, send people to other countries. Even, let's say, Polish people go to Turkey. They don't know the language, but they learn something from living together with other people from Turkey. So that's the importance that we should know about those differences, that the culture is not equal, and that we have or get some competence in intercultural communication. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you very much for your very inspiring, not only for us speech, I mean us, think about us, because in RC26 we have members from almost all continents. But if I may ask, I don't know, question or maybe rather comments, because however, I'm honoring your opinion, because digital tools like social media or internet, this is a big chance for intercultural communication. But why do you think, what is your opinion, why we can find so many hate speech when this is paradox of social media, that on the one hand, we can have the big opportunity to discuss, to meet, for example, today, with other people from other culture, from other cultural roots, experiences, etc. On the other hand, of course, not only in this international space, but especially in domestic space, we have so many hate speech, so many aggressive speech. What do you think? And the second, last week, it was the anniversary of liberation of Nazi camp in Auschwitz. And I heard the opinion of one lady who, unfortunately, he was at prison in Auschwitz, and he told such sentence: "The Holocaust started Holocaust."
Yeah.
She told such sentence: "The Holocaust started from hate speech. At the beginning of the way to Holocaust was only, we can say, only hate speech." Do you think that unfortunately we are still on the same way? I don't know in which part of the world, but do you think that it could be such a trigger to start this way to similar?
Yeah, thank you for this question. You know, we have a lot of demonstrations at the moment. And I think I have been also on those demonstrations, and they are for democracy and against right extremism. I don't use the word fascism because it's connected to in my sense, to a certain period of time. And I think we should not hate the others from the party, the populist party, but we should discuss with them and give our arguments what we think are better. But naturally, to your first question, every ethnicity is thinking, when they don't have any connection with others, they think they are the number one in the world. They are the best ones. And so what is needed is more communication with others to show that the others have problems also and have other solutions, which might also be better than the solutions we have found. And though have not that all the ethnicities are equal. That's one important feeling when you live in different countries, study or work in different countries. You have to go outside and not get limited to your own country, to your own ethnicity.
Okay. Thank you very much. Wells? Okay, so, Leonid, okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will be very fast. Probably it's kind of well-known private question because I work with Germanist organization and usually I start my talk or conversation in English. But after when they understand that you understand Germany, they open yourself more more closely, let's say in private way. It's also super interesting. It's because why? Probably you have an answer. It's only with Germanist people or with everyone. Thank you.
I get the meaning of the question, sorry.
Could you repeat very shortly?
It wasn't this still to me, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. As I said, I have the working contact with Germany colleagues, and usually we're speaking only in English. But after they understand I speak also Germany, they open themselves more closely and stay and be open. And I do not understand why, because they like that you speak Germany, and the second question, is it allowed for Germany's or only or also for another nations? Yeah, thank you.
I think your question was why they receded to their own language, if possible, instead of speaking English as they could speak. I think that's a question we all have because we have this idea that the German language might be different, not highly estimated like the French. They highly estimate their language. The Germans don't estimate. But I know from the commission, for instance, the people working in the commission, at the evening while working to each other, they're working Germans, French, Polish, Romanian, and so on. And the whole day they are speaking English or French. And in the evening they recede to their own community. And because also they are exhausted. I think that's not only a question for the Germans, it's also a question for the other groups that are trying to recede at that moment because of exhaustion to come to their own culture. And I have been living very, very long in different countries, so I know that you lose a language at a certain time. When you work for hours and hours, though you're good in this language, after let's say 10 hours, you start to the simplification of the language. And this is a matter you find everywhere. The Germans might be exact in this, what you found out, but also I found out in Brussels, for instance, that also the other nations also receded to their own language and culture, if possible.
Thank you very much. I'm sure that everywhere we should remember about the respect of other people, and this is the primary values. And from Slubice, we jump to Brazil because there is a Professor Cassius Chai, and Professor Cassius Chai speech will be about democracy and distrust. So, Cassius, thank you very much for joining the session, and the internet space is yours.
Many thanks, my dear President and President of RC26 of IPSA. I'm very happy and honored to share this afternoon for me here in Brazil. I mean, I think that's evening for you in Poland. I'd like also to express my gratitude to all the organizers for this international meeting held in Poland. I'd like to congratulate my dear colleagues, Professor Alex, Professor Oscar, Professor sorry if I do not pronounce it correctly, Ragnar from Germany, and also my following speakers, colleagues, Leonid, Furchan, Anju, Yukti, and of course, JJ. So very briefly, I'd like to share with you my PowerPoint presentation, if I can, just 1 minute, please. Ask if it's been shown for you. Is that okay?
Yeah, everything is okay.
Okay, perfect. So before I approach the topic, democracy and distrust, the judicial review role in fundamental law enforcement in times of disinformation and geopolitics shifts regarding human rights protection and the rule of law coherence, of course, I'd like to briefly come back to the precious lessons that we've been given by our previous colleagues. So from Professor Alex, I'd like to dialogue with his perception about the role of the educational process in the enforcement of democracy. And of course, when we talk about education, this is a multidimensional feature and institutional design that pushes forward in order to improve and to strengthen our social and political and legal commitments to fight against corruption, as been discussed by our dearest former uh, RC26 chair, Professor Oscar Perez. And we cannot actually get into a mutual understanding without complying with some requirements just shared by our dear colleague from Germany, Professor Ragnar. So when he invited us to discuss intercultural communication, I'd like to depart my reflection from those three core ideas: educational process to enforce democracy, mutual legal correspondence as being said under or abridged by the metaphorical perception of public communication. So why to talk about democracy and distrust? And why to problematize democracy and distrust under the features or the institutional architecture of the mechanism of judicial review? I have learned, my dear colleague and friend JJ, that under Polish constitutional provisions in Article 180, not only Poland, but Germany itself, United States themselves, Spain, by its own society, as of course Brazil, we have much in common. All of us, we have agreed that our societies shall be organized under the institutional designs of the rule of law. And not only that, that the rule of law shall comply itself with the challenges and the missions to realize for all and each of our people the meaning of democracy. From freedom of expression, from the expectations of equality, for at least what is going to be discussed by our dear colleagues, Ahmed, minority rights, or about what shall be discussed by Anju when she invited us to reflect about the crossroads, navigating turbulent waters in the 21st century, meaning the recognition of difference. So why shall we discuss democracy and distrust in the context of democratic societies that themselves they had decided to rule their own aspirations in this world in the endeavor of realizing the mankind of all of us, despite our differences in nationalities, despite our differences in understanding the deities, the things that are not in this natural world, we shall be, all of us, at the same page. Because if we don't share mutual legal correspondence, I shall agree with Professor Ragnar. The law itself shall not comply with all their promises that our governments had done for all of us. In the end of the day, what shall be the limits of the judicial power? What shall be the commitments and the responsibilities in terms of an effective accountability for our politicians from ourselves as civil servants, as law or political science professors, but above all this, as me, as a common person, and as you, as also common people in your own countries. So the relationship between judicial review and democracy in times of disruption is complex. On the one hand, judicial review can act as a bulwark against democracy disruption, checking governmental power, ensuring the constitutionality of laws and decisions. But on the other hand, judicial review can also be manipulated, misused, contributing to the disruption to its design to prevent. We cannot forget that in a well-functioning democracy, judicial review is critical in maintaining the balance of power and upholding the rule of law. It checks the legislative and executive branches, ensuring they do not overstep their constitutional boundaries or infringe upon individual rights. In this way, it can help prevent the erosion of democratic values and processes. For example, when the judiciary, in the case of Brazil, played the strings to overcome a democratic government elected itself by the will of the majority, it turns out and invites the corruption to serve itself and push aside the democracy dignity of a freedom election. In this way, it can help prevent the erosion of democratic values, of course. When the judiciary becomes politicized, only politicized in the government interest and not to understand the legitimate role that the judicial power has to execute and exercise as a state power, not as a primary government serving institution to legitimize what politicians, corrupted ones, they shall understand in our time what is the common good for all of us. This can lead to a loss of faith in the judicial system and the perception that the justice is not impartial or fair. The core concepts adopted in this paper, I shall invite you, include the gapness words, palabras vacías, emptiness words, that Anjo and you following us, they will discuss the populism. So palabras vacías, emptiness words, can be fulfilled according to the time interest revealed by a political agent who may not be committed with the true democratic values. So by judicial review, we shall understand the process by which courts review the actions of the legislative and executive branch. A democratic society cannot abolish this mechanism under constitutional provisions. And I'm very, very honored to remind myself that back 1791, Poland was among the first new societies under the rule of law designed to establish the commonness between the commons and the nobility, and have stated under constitutional provisions the protection of vulnerable people in your society. And we have learned much from the Poland experience, and of course, from German, and of course, from United States experiences. And of course, we cannot forget that Alexis de Tocqueville has left for us the reflection to understand the key elements differentiating the perception of democracy in the New World and in the ancient regime, l'Ancien Régime. So we have to understand that the rule of law shall be taken as the principle that all individuals and institutions are subject to and accountable to the law, and that no one is above the law. Democracy shall be taken and understood as a system of government in which power is held by the people, either directly through elected representative. Geopolitical shifts are changes in the global political landscape that can significantly impact the functioning of democratic systems and the rule of law. Of course, all of these elements, they help us to enforce the levels of participation in the public reasoning arena on behalf of the meaning of democracy. Now, I selected, because of our time granted, for which I'm very, very, very thankful to JJ for this very, very unforgettable opportunity and experience, 3 of other questions that I shall reflect in the paper in the end. How can judicial review mechanism adapt to the challenge posed by disinformation and geopolitical shifts? The discussion, the previous one about the hate speech. Europe has much challenge as we have in Brazil. The Paraguayans, brothers and sisters, they've been facing as well, or the Venezuelans ones. After the Budapest Convention, the first protocol, how much efficacy this legal framework has supported the fight of European societies and countries against the hate speech, the misinformation, the disinformation industry, in order to weaken and to unbalance geopolitical interests, not only in Europe, but in the relationship between Europe and Asia countries, between Europe and South America countries, because when we reflect about geopolitics, we shall not forget that we are talking about 5 strings of power for our institutions and for our people. The national defense interest and features, the economic feature, the transfer and access of sense and critical technology and science, the political feature itself, and the psychosocial element for a country, which is the constitutional subject, the enforcement of the citizenship. How can the coherence of the rule of law be maintained amidst the rapid geopolitical changes and the spread of disinformation? And finally, what are the key constraints and risks faced by judicial review mechanisms in the current global context? And how can they be addressed to ensure the protection of fundamental rights and democratic principle. Maybe by a first sight, it shall be taken as very theoretical, but I push forward from the very short time that I'm granted yet. When we talk about geopolitical shift, it is we are talking about poverty, discrimination, human trafficking, torture, censorship, unfair trials, forced displacement, violence against women, child labor, detention abuses, among many other different figures that, in the end of the day, require for all of us a commitment with our democracy and with our experience in enforcing democracy, not only for me, not only for you, because me in our Brazilian society, and I'm sure that each of you in your own society, all of us, we are in a different place in the context. We don't have concerns about what we drink, about what shall have for dinner today. But if I look outside this building from which I'm talking to you, I can see on the streets some levels of poverty. I can see on the streets in Brazil, in this city where I'm talking to you, which is in the countryside, that's the second largest city in the state I live in, the state of Maranhão. Territorially speaking, we are largest as German country, but we are only 6.5 million people here. But yet, only 1% of our society gets income over $9,000. So inequality is a core element that does not perfect the understanding and the meaning and the living of democracy. So just pushing to my conclusions, if I shall discuss geopolitical features under the principle of psychological, psychosocial, and economic and technological geopolitical features to discuss the role of judicial review in enforcing democracy, I should come back to what has been discussed before in terms of psychosocial geopolitics. When social media and public opinion, they are used as instruments to rise influence against minorities, for example. And they can impact democracy. And this context of facts requires the functioning of judicial review mechanism. And of course, we as judges, we as prosecutors, we shall be the first in line to understand the true role functioning of the judicial power apparatus and the prosecutorial general's office mechanism to give not only reasonable legal answers to our social conflicts. We shall express through our actions the true commitment with our aspirations regarding the protection of human rights. If I shall discuss economic features from the geopolitical perspective, we shall understand when the judicial power has to give his interpretation about trade agreements, or when we shall to understand the sanctions against the Huawei, what is the instrumental meaning that some countries are fighting against piracy, or this is a kind of a strategy just to turn over the economic balances against the underdeveloping countries themselves. To conclude, I'd like to thank you, and I'd like to state 4 main ideas to discuss and to learn from you, of course. In a well-functioning democracy, judicial review is critical in maintaining the balancing of power, upholding the rule of law. We cannot abolish this material and this procedural instrument that can constrain either a president leading the executive branch or can constrain as well a portion of the legislative body who's been involved in corruption by themselves, putting forward personal interests, party interests, despite the common good of their own society. It checks the legislative and executive branch, ensuring they do not overstep their constitutional boundaries. Judicial review is more than just a legal process. It's also a mechanism for ensuring integrity and constitutionalism within a democratic society. Because courts can ensure that governments act with integrity through judicial review, abiding by fairness, transparency, and accountability. There is no legitimate judicial power without those 3 elements: fairness, transparency, accountability. Judicial review plays a critical role in sustaining democracy because it serves as a check, as I have said, on government power. And finally, the effectiveness of judicial review depends on the independence and integrity of the judiciary. There is no strong democracy, there is no freedom society without these features that can support, that can realize the possibility that everyone in the society being protected under the understanding and the meaning of human rights themselves. Many thanks, Professor DJ.
Thank you very much, Cassius. Thank you very much, Cassius. I'm sorry, but we have to change the order of this panel because I have suggestions for our Asian friends, because we must remember that in Rajasthan is almost midnight, and in Pakistan 11 p.m. Furkan is on university, and I'm afraid that the university will be closed very soon because it's in the middle of the night. So we will postpone the questions on the end of the session, and we change the order. So we start from Yukti Jupta, then Anju Jupta, and Furkan, and Leonid. I'm sorry, yeah, but so you know, it's very. I'm not in a comfortable situation, but I understand that so for our colleagues in India and Pakistan have also human rights, and they should have the time for rest. So thank you, Cassius, once again, and I hope that on the end session we will have the questions. So let's jump to the Yukta Jupta, Rajasthan, India. And if I will ask you for 10 minutes speeches, okay, it will be okay. Because yeah, I'm afraid that Furkan will be closed in university. Sorry. Okay.
It completely works. Thank you so much.
It will be about populism. Yeah. it will be about populism and globalization, yeah?
Yeah. Okay. First of all, greetings to everyone for the day. However, it's a good night here back in India, but I'm sure we are all from different time zones. And I'd like to thank the organizers for this wonderful session. And I'd like to take your permission to present my PPT.
You have
I hope it is visible to everyone.
you have this button on the in the right corner that sharing, yeah? And when you have your presentation on your screen, it is enough to push this button and everything will be okay.
Okay. Is it visible right now?
No, Yukti, it's not visible.
Okay, I'll just make sure.
It seems that computer
Is
is
it
also
still not visible? Is
Not
it still
yet.
not visible?
Not yet.
Not yet, yes. I think
Okay, not an
you
issue
should.
at all. Yeah, will it be fine if I present it without the presentation?
Of course, yeah. It depends on
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So the topic that I'll be speaking upon is the rise of populism and the emergent challenges to globalization. However, it is not directly related to human rights, but it is very much indirectly related to it also and is the need of the hour to be discussed about. Now, before proceeding further, I'd like to first highlight about what populism is all about. So, over the years, over the centuries, there has been a debate whether it is an ideology or a discourse or a political strategy. But if I have to explain it in simple words, I would say that populism is characterized by appealing to the interests and concerns of ordinary people, which are often termed as homogeneous or the pure people of a native region, against a perceived elite or any kind of establishment. The entire concept works on the sentiment of giving the power back to the people and of working for the people, like what Trump has been doing in America since what he did in America with the entire agenda of America First policy. So here comes my first example itself, that how America First as a concept has highlighted the rise of populism in the globalized era. Furthermore, I'd like to highlight two more examples over here. One is of a former Venezuelan president, Hugo Chavez. He implemented a lot of social programs which addressed poverty, inequality, and he addressed them by challenging the economic elites of the country. And the another example is a former prime minister of Italy. He Now it's an important point here that he utilized the use of media to connect with the people, to connect with the public, understanding their problems and the challenges. And in the meanwhile, he has to face the criticism from the political elite themselves. Now, coming to the core topic, that how there is a relationship between the populism and globalization, we cannot deny the fact that internet is one of the prominent sources for increasing globalization all around. And the role of globalization in fanning the populist wave and how coming the power of populist leaders in different European countries as well as United States of America has the potential of reshaping the nature of globalization. Apart from that, here I'd like to highlight one more example, that is Brexit is another example. We can consider it as maybe partially another good example, which highlights how the natives of a particular country demanded a separation from a global union, that is particularly the European Union. Now, just like every political ideology, populism also have two sets of wings. One is we have the populist right wing, and the other we have as the populist left wing. When we talk about the populist right wing, here I'd like everyone to consider examples of advanced countries in Europe, where the main concern is of immigration, the notion of the pure people that they face threat of that they assume that the natives are facing threat because of various immigration policies. Also, the thinkers or the leaders who lean towards the populist right category are very much suspicious regarding the press, intellectuals, and civil society members. Now, when we come to the populist left, they primarily focus on the economically superior elites and how they are suppressing the majority of population who does not fall into the echelons of power. Now, the main reason why the rich are getting richer according to them is because of globalization. So the populist left primarily argue for stringent economic barriers and nationalist policies. And here we can take examples of Southern Europe and Latin America. So populist right is all about the immigration policies, or we can say the more normative approach, whereas the populist left is about the economic domain. Now, when we look into the role of globalization, as I've already highlighted, the role of internet and how much a premier role it has played in this present era of globalization. But here, I'd like to highlight few examples and few researchers which have been highlighting that how globalization is also hampering the entire global scenario. First, here I'd like to highlight the name of a famous Turkish economist, Mr. Danny Roderick, and he was possibly the first one actually highlighted that the decline in global inequality does not mean decline in domestic inequality also. Rather, he highlighted that though the global inequality might be declining, but there is a massive increase in domestic inequality, and we need to be really careful about that. Uh, Apart from that, here I'd also like to highlight research which was done by Observer Research Foundation, which is a global think tank based in New Delhi. They highlighted that populist leaders have two different kinds of behavior. When they are representing domestically, they appear to be an exclusivist, whereas when they're representing the country internationally, they appear to be globalist in nature. Then we have Arvind Subramaniam, sir, who was also the former chief economic advisor to the government of India. He highlighted that how hyper globalization has resulted in the resurfacing of populism in the present time. Earlier, there was no threat to local natives with respect to globalization, but with the new generations, we are seeing that there's excessive dependency on globalization, and we are ready to sideline other factors, other native factors. So, Arvind Subramaniam highlighted that we need to be really careful about the hyper globalization. And lastly, and most importantly, here I'd like to highlight the financial crash of 2008, as we all are aware of, which has, I believe, resulted a lot into populism as a reaction maybe to the broken system of economic governance at the international level. Then, if we come to what are the main challenges to globalization, here I'd like to highlight that globalization is only one of the reasons why populism is spreading its wing. Another and a very major reason is the broken system of economic governance, which thinkers often define as neoliberalism, which they believe have skewed the balance towards capital and away from labor, and have given rise to lower inflation rates, lower growth rates, and increasing income inequalities and diminished job security. All these things have further fueled by the financial crash, which I mentioned in the earlier slide of the 2008. Another perspective apart from the economic one as a challenge to globalization here, which we can focus upon, is the change in power dynamics, especially we cannot deny the fact that how the Asian countries are all ready and are all get up and are causing a challenge to the earlier so-called, we can say, unipowers and bipolar world order powers. So that is another one more concern why populism is taking a step ahead in this era of globalization. Now, if we look that, okay, all these problems are there, we have populism also, which is existing day by day, and we have globalization also, which cannot be ignored because of internet particularly. So what could be the way forward? When we talk about way forward, here I'd like to highlight historical approaches which addressed threats to globalization, such as building political coalitions which offer protectionist concessions. Then there could broader fiscal and social reforms rather than individually targeted solutions. And last but not the least, as Danny Roderick also highlighted, that it's the need of the hour that we rebalance this entire concept of globalization, where the global north and global south are considered at a broader scale in a cohesive group, and the decisions are made. Now, concluding this entire topic, all I would say is that we cannot ignore the fact that there are shifting global dynamics, transitions from Trump to Biden to Brexit, we had, and strongman leaders, especially in Russia, Turkey, Hungary, and to that extent, even Poland. So populism is there, is very much there. But, and also one more thing, that there is skepticism towards international organizations and regional groupings, whether we consider the Ukraine war or the Israel crisis. We all have been questioning the global institutions which are there to protect the world from another world war. Uh, so the final conclusion from my side would be that the need of the hour is a big and a loud call for cooperation among mainstream political parties and all the leaders, so that we can have a better globalized world wherein everyone is living peacefully and in harmony. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Yukti. Thank you very much again. So now we will still in India, in Rajasthan, and Anju Gupta from University Jaipur. Yeah, and your speech, it will be about Europe, a continent as a crossroads, navigation Europe's turbulent waters in the 21st century. Okay. Andrew, the floor is yours. Andrew, can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. Yes, yes. Thank you so much. It's almost midnight
Once
here.
again, I'm sorry that it's so late. I know that it's almost, I don't know if almost midnight. Yeah.
But I'll be very precise.
Yeah,
it is almost, I mean, it is almost 12.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So I'll be very precise. In my presentation, although I'm not presenting on the PPT, but what I am trying to discuss in this paper was about, the changing role of especially EU, how the geopolitical awakening happened after Ukraine war. So, with a focus on Ukraine, the battle between European Union and Russia for control of European political, economic, and security order, which was very irregularly escalated since 2004. Basically, EU's primary strategy for mitigating this competition was, in a denial mode. But once Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, this strategy was no longer viable, and in three crucial ways, the EU joined the race as an emergent political player as a result. By waging war over European order, using its physical powers, and by expanding its boundaries. So most crucially, in response to Russia's war on Ukraine, the EU is actively working to reshape the European order. And the EU has strengthened its hard power capabilities, and it has provided military support, even if it is primarily pursuing its aim via civilian methods. So I have discussed, the how the geopolitical awakening, basically how it was in full scale after the Ukraine war in February 22. Uh, Basically, the new strategy which was propagated was the European neighborhood policy, which was introduced in 2004. And since this policy was basically, it was after the post Cold War strategy, and European Union's main attention was on Russia and the nations that joined the Union in 2004. So the 2004 Big Bang expansion made a more comprehensive strategy towards Ukraine and other recently arrived Eastern neighbors. So this war basically was a geopolitical awakening and for European Union, and this the so-called shared neighbor policy of, the misconception which European Union was carrying about Russia was put to an end. The security and democracy of the broader Europe was acknowledged to be seriously threatened by these imperialist ambitions of the Kremlin. And due to Russia's unlawful and unjustful aggression, the European members adopted the unprecedented and forceful actions to defend Ukraine and put pressure on the aggressor. And it worked closely with US and the other like-minded nations. So this new strategy, it included the decision to offer Ukraine membership, which was, it is clearly stated as a geopolitical action. And as a result, European Union's response to full-scale war involvement, there were three crucial components of geopolitical activeness, which I discussed in my paper also elaborately. It was involving itself in a struggle for European order, then bolstering and expanding its hard power and expanding its borders while they were being forcefully and fiercely contested. So there was a significant distinctions between European Union's and Russia's strategies for handling geopolitical competition. The European Union's conception of order is based on regulations, international law, both of which Russia was flagrantly it was broken by Russia, and the European Union does not impose the so-called liberal empire on the other players by force, and it continues to reject the concept of zones of influence. So, therefore, the cornerstone of the EU's geopolitical awakening is a normative emphasis on the rule-based order. So I try to, elaborately explain how EU's Ukraine policy has changed over the time in the context of escalating geopolitical tensions since 2004, and how its role changed. Now, this geopolitical, awakening and the role of EU, uh, it also brought some challenges for the foreign policy and security policy in the era of this multipolar rivalry. And the academics have focused more on European Union and Russia's competition for their shared neighborhood, and the rise of geopolitics and EU's approach to security and resilience. They also focus, the scholars have also focused, saying that EU's reaction to the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, to evaluate the nature and extent of the, the upheaval in the European international order. It also changed. So this multipolar competition, which affected EU's foreign policy, which we see as the main factor limiting EU's approach to Ukraine since the introduction of the ENP in 2004. So I'm trying to highlight how this multipolar competition affected EU's policy, how this international crisis, altogether changed the systematic strategic battle, and how the multilateral institution, they were used as instrumental of strategy, between during this conflict. The one thing which I would like to, highlight is definitely very important regarding the geopolitics. One of my colleague, one of my friend, was also talking about geopolitics, which is very important. Is when we see that there is still something which is raising questions regarding the role of European countries. How this conflict between Russia and Ukraine, what will be the role of European Union, how the US and the wider West will focus on the EU policy. So there is still a conflict between the divergent ideas about the nature, the political, economic, and security order in Europe. So to conclude, I think one of the things which I have pointed out is that yes, EU has found it difficult to reduce tension in the areas, even with the minimal, with the use of many lateral and multilateral institutions. But there has been a noticeable change since 1922 towards aiding Ukraine's military endeavors and putting pressures on Russia. And notably, the EU intensified its support for Ukraine's political and economic reforms, and when the nation was granted candidate status in 22, and it has quickly improved the institutional, diplomatic, and functional aspect of its foreign and security policy tools in response to the crisis. But it is very important to understand the EU's function as a geopolitical player, particularly in forming the European order in the face of fundamental norm problem. So there's a much necessity to study this, this war, along with the effect on EU foreign policy and its geopolitical awakening. So I think there's a lot to be, that is why I have kept the title that it is still in the turbulence. So with that, I conclude my paper. Thank you, and definitely since the time is very less, so I would like to hear from my other fellows also. Thank you so much.
Once again, thank you very much. And again, I'm sorry that it's so late now. And very quickly from Rajasthan, we jump to the Karachi, Pakistan, and there is Furkan Ahmed, I hope. Furkan is still on University of Karachi. And it will be about religious nationalism and minority rights in South Asia. Okay.
Thank you so much, JJ, and all the colleagues. And I apologize for I'll be very short. I'll be very precise. A couple of days ago, I had the honor of hosting a podcast with Dr. Fernandi Verene, who is the former UN Special Rapporteur on the minority issues. And I raised the question that is there a commonalities found between the European nationalism or the religious nationalism of South Asia, especially in parts of India and uh, in Myanmar as well. So he just said it, and I quote that there is an institutionalization and politicization in terms of European nationalism, and it is deeply uh, and it has been deeply rooted or deeply uprooted in the forms of in India and Myanmar very recently. So I would talk about the historical perspective, how religious nationalism emerged during the pre and post-colonial era, and how it transformed, and how it had the I would call it the domino effect on the other countries of South Asia as well. So I would start off with our characteristics of religious nationalism in the context of South Asia. National and religious identities are regarded as important catalysts for political activity. Religion seeks to unite believers of all creeds, wherever they may live, while nations assert that people who share traits like language and race are united within a certain region. Even though nationalism and religion seem to go against each other, one being bound to space, the other is transcending it. The demand for nation states founded on for a religiously homogeneous community in a specific territory, isolated from other religious communities, continues to shape South Asia today. So when I say during the colonial era in the subcontinent, there were three major religion, or I would say nationalism uh, entities emerged. The first one was emerged as a result of colonial rule, which was Indian National Congress, which is INC, that was founded in 1885. And later on, All India Muslim League emerged as a form of who people wanted to have a separate Muslim nation. And later on, there's also Rashtra Swayam Sevak Sarang, which is famously known as RSS, emerged. Even though they did not participate in the struggles of independence, very, uh, generally in term as compared to All India Muslim League and Indian National Congress, but they did, express their uh, independence through their social activities and other things. So speaking of Indian National Congress, which was basically built on the ideological, religious, linguistic, and ethnic groups, it was founded by, it was initially led by Mahatma Gandhi, and it later on led by Jawaharlal Nehru. While on the other hand, the All India Muslim League built its idea of a nation based on Islam, inspired by the ideas outlined in the two nation theory. The Muslim League demanded a separate state for consisting of Muslim majoritarian regions in the state of British India. On the other hand, RSS, with a nation ideal based on Hindutva, the RSS represented the third major stream nationalism. Hindutva sought among other things, to establish a Hindu nation with a core of Hindu values and culture. During the independence movement, the RSS continued to advance Hindutva through social activities, even though, as I said, it refrained from overtly opposing the British rule. Speaking of the domino effect, I would now refer it as how it impacted other countries after the independence of India and Pakistan. So Pakistan was initially built on the idea of Islam as a unifying force, but ethnic and linguistic nationalism challenged this narrative later on. As a result, East Pakistan demand for autonomy and representation led to the 71 independence war, resulting in the creation of Bangladesh. Initially, Bangladesh was a secular state, then it shifted towards religious nationalism over time, especially during the military rule of Ziaul Haq from 1971 to 1988. India, I would now shift my focus to India. The Indian National Congress opposed the religious nationalism, promoting secularism and socialism. It did face various insurgencies and movements based on ethnic, linguistic, and religious identity. Uh, Incumbent government of the BJP's growing support signals a shift towards a Hindu nationalist nation building, which is called a project. I will now shift my focus to Sri Lanka, which was initially a secular state, shifted towards a Buddhist dominant state due to its ethno-religious nationalism, the civil war between liberation tigers of Tamil Elam, known as Tamil Tigers, and the government escalated the ethnic tensions within the country. Buddhist nationalism, represented by the groups like Bodhu, Bola Sena, gained prominence in response to perceived Islamization. Maldives, I would call it as a docile nation in terms of uh, religious nationalism. That it is comparatively a majority of Muslim state that hasn't experienced significant nationalism movements, where Islam plays a unifying role, but foreign influences challenge the interpretation of Islam. However, once again, I would call it a domino effect. This rising religious nationalism basically is impacting the minority rights of South Asia. In Bangladesh, it is leaving impacts on Hindus. Religious minorities, particularly the Hindus, have faced challenges, incidents of violence, land grabbings, and discrimination. Cases of discrimination have been reported. The rise of religious nationalism has contributed to an environment where minority rights are sometimes overlooked. Speaking of Pakistan, there are two religious minorities that are under dark clouds these days. Ahmadiyya communities, they have faced severe persecution due to the law declaring them non-Muslims. The rise of religious nationalism has fueled hostility against this minority by limiting their religious freedom and leading to social exclusion. Christians in Pakistan are also facing some discrimination. Recently, their churches were burnt out due to the rise of religious nationalism, but it does not have the backing of any government, but it has people who are involved in rising intolerance against these groups. In India, there is an anti-Muslim sentiment found. The rise of Hindu nationalism has been associated with the incidents of violence against Muslims, lynchings, and attacks on Muslim individuals, often fueled by religious biases, have raised concern about the protection of minority rights. And I'll also talk about the what is happening in Kashmir. Moving forward to Sri Lanka, Muslim minority in Sri Lanka has faced discrimination and violence, especially after the Easter Sunday bombing in 2019. The Buddhist national group, including Bodhu Bela Sena, have targeted Muslim, leading to tensions and challenges to their rights. Maldives, again, as I said, do not have those sort of happenings around them, but because they are predominantly Muslim, doesn't have a significant religious minority. However, the influence of more conservative interpretation of Islam may impact those who deviate from mainstream beliefs, potentially affecting their rights. In my paper, I would also be categorically providing the commonalities between India and Rohingyans, Muslim as well, and I'd also provide some of the lessons that could be learned where multiculturalism, as our distinguished speaker also talked about the importance of intercultural languages or communication. So I will also discuss about some of the success stories. Let's say, for the example of Singapore, which celebrates almost all the religious holidays. Switzerland is also a country that can be taken as an example, which has provided territorial autonomy to their ethnic or religious minority groups as well. So moving forward, there are case studies. As I indicated, that I would be providing anti-Muslim violence in Rohingya, in India specifically, Christians in Pakistan, which are facing the issues like blasphemy laws and the vandalization of their churches. What implication does this have in terms of religious nationalism if we talk about global implication? There is the potential for regional instability and conflict in South Asia, which is considered as a microcosm. The religious nationalism witnessed in South Asia serves as a microcosm for global trends. The similar movements elsewhere can lead to regional instability and conflicts, as seen in Rohingya crisis and tensions in Kashmir. There could be cross-border impacts or implications owing to the religious nationalism, if unchecked, that can spill across borders, exacerbating existing geopolitical tensions and contributing to regional instability. Moving forward, I would like to also touch upon, as one of our colleagues talked about, the populism. The rise of populism and extremism globally, it basically has global resonance. The global rise of populist and extremist movements often shares commonalities with religious nationalism, like xenophobia, exclusionary ideologies, and anti-minority sentiments transcend regional boundaries. It can also impact global governance. The influence of religious nationalism in one region can contribute to a broader global trend, as in the case of Rohingya Muslims, challenging established norms of inclusivity and diversity. At the end, I would like to conclude with a lighter note that the world is too small to be divided by us versus them mentalities. Embracing diversity is not just a moral imperative, but a necessity for a peaceful and prosperous global society. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Furkan. Thank you. Very quickly, now we back to Poland, to Poznań, and there is Leonid. Leonid, maybe 10 minutes will be enough for you?
I'm pretty sure, yes, we are out of time. I understand how it's going. Yeah,
but
10 minutes
first of all, I should also introduce you, because I know that you are. Thank you very much for this book, which I received lately from you. And you must know that Leonid is not only a PhD student on our university, but also Belarusian activist, and in a special group of young people, which they called Rada. Yeah. So, Leonid, the floor is yours. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Can you see my presentation, Elizabeth?
Yeah. Everything.
Yeah, super nice. Yeah. I will be very short, and thank you very much for the invitation. And dear colleagues, I wanted to speak today about the status of young peoples in Belarus from prison to political migration, because I am from Belarus. Right now, I'm political refugee in Poland. I have a status and so on and so on. And for sure, I'm doing my PhD dissertation at Damascus University, and also about youth topic. Probably it's a little bit later. What about? It's a book, what we're talking about also is professor. It looks like this. If you want probably to read, I can send you in paper or in digital forms. What is this for books and what's the presentation? It's probably one story as a first book in Belarus. In Belarusian history, also about youth rights. What is it? Youth rights. We also can talk a little bit later. This book include mass repression in Belarus since 2020. Probably you know what happened in Belarus in 2020 and after these events. And for sure, you can inside these books you can find a lot of topics, chapters about women rights, about Belarusian volunteers movements, attacks of youth, political rights and organization. The main idea to express the whole story about shrinking space, what's going on in our country in Belarus since 2020 till now, because as we can see after 2022, the situation can not can change but can repeat in different countries and dictator who for example like our last president use human rights at their own interest in the spheres was super non-democratic, and we tried as youth organization to explain what we can do not only in Belarus but in European and also United Nations level. Mass repression, as you probably know or know, around 5,000 people already and was unfairly convicted, and right now they're all in prison in Belarus, and also my colleagues. I was searched by KGB, by police in my country, and my wife. That's why I have to leave, and I am forced to leave my country, and now I'm living in Poland. Youth and human rights in Belarus. We talked usually about arrest and searches, about forced derogation of youth, NGO, detention, bullying against leaders, and for sure it's hate speech. What are you talking about, dear professor? And financial and technical attacks for all activists, and so on and so on. Why I'm talking about this right now? Because for the last couple of years, me personally, because I have legal background before, I made by myself several international documents like alternative report on human rights or on youth rights, specifically for United Nations, for Human Rights Council, and for Committee of Economic, Social, Cultural Rights, and present by myself in Geneva those documents. I am trying and I try to express that after not only, not even, let's say, 2020 as events in Belarus, but after COVID situation, youth rights or youth generation already appeal or ask for additional rights for youth, like a special, not special, separate group of the society because of different reasons. That's why this topic was grown up from my book probably, and then continue. I'm doing right now my dissertation in university, and my academic paper probably for you will be super, kind of interest, because I search or I do my own research on all United Nations instruments. I mean paper, alternative report, and I found only at least like 1% drop naming or naming of use. I mean, when we use 9 United Nations committee or 30 bodies universal periodic review, especially procedure, when we talk about what right now people on United Nations talking about and how they compare use or how they fight for the use rights, it seems that almost no one know right now what does it mean, or what does it mean use rights in general. And that's it's very interesting, because I'm in working group on European Youth Forum in Brussels, and last year those organization, it's NGO organization, already establish a draft of new United Nations resolution convention on youth rights. The main idea to establish a new United Nations committee on youth rights, and we are doing our also not mine, our document convention, and with Panama, with Greece, and with Portugal right now prepare those proposals for General Assembly of United Nations. It's super probably important that most important figures or rules or players on those movement. It's NGO organization from Lithuania, from Germany, and also from France, and we are working very closely together. And yeah, for sure from Sweden also. And then I mean I keep my own all information experience for the last 10 years, like human rights defenders and builders and across the boards, because I used to be a lecturer in Philippines, in Vietnam, and in other countries. And now I'm trying to understand through my PhD dissertation if youth generation or youth already has a legal opportunity or more of a political opportunity to establish a new United Nations Institute of Human Rights. When it's very shortly, but I mean, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for understanding our project situation, because I'm out of the time. We are out of the time, but I should present also my presentation. So maybe I go to only to conclusions. I'm sorry, and because idea of my speech, it was the attempt to conceptualize the idea of digital human rights. And so in the conclusions, first general rule is that in my opinion, the same human rights and human rights obligation that apply offline also applied in the digital environment, which human rights, especially idea of dignity of human being. So we can, or I can propose the definition of digital human rights. This is a legal or other norms and standard to which all human beings are entitled, irrespective of race, gender, nationality, ethnicity, language, religion, and any other status, to protect human dignity in the digital world. Yeah, and so theoretical framework of my idea was the Professor Vashak concept of three generation of human rights, and according to his idea, we can find also three levels of digital human rights. First, positive rights. So in this, for example, we can say that this is freedom to, and we can find in this catalog universal connectivity, ensuring digital inclusion for all. Second level, it's negative rights. So it means freedom from something. And in this catalog, we can find such rights like securing the protection of human rights in the digital age, global cooperation on artificial intelligence. And the last level, this is solidarity rights. And here we can find such examples like promoting digital public goods to create a fairer world, strengthening digital capacity building, promoting trust and security in the digital environment, building more effective collaboration architectures. So based on the Vasha concepts, I try to build the new theory of digital human rights. And these three levels of digital human rights. I think that this conception could be developing on the future conference. So it was very, very short, quickly presentation. I'm sorry, I have the almost 20 slides, but I know that we are out of the time. So if someone have some comments of for all presentations, of course we can. Yeah, Furkan. Yeah, I'm afraid, Furkan, you are still on university, because you mentioned that you are afraid that your laptop will be arrested very soon.
Yeah, I'm not looking outside the door, so I'm assuming I may be locked, but no worries. I'm here till the last moment. Very quick question to our guest speaker, Professor Ragnar. You've talked about the importance of intercultural communication. Do you see like is there a coexistence in terms of intercultural languages versus multicultural, perspective?
I gave you a certain answer. I gave you a certain answer to your question when I was mentioning the Erasmus program. I think this could be also extended not only to countries from the European Union, but also to many other countries. I think it's important that students from different countries learn how other cultures exist and what they are creating and how they could avoid misunderstanding and failures of their communication. I think this would be very important. And I think this is one of the most important factors of the European Union, besides many others, but the young ones that will be sent to different countries and learn about the other cultures. And that means at the same time that they try to see that the other cultures in, let's say, Polish going to Turkey, or that the other cultures are also equal. Not the one, your own culture is better than all the others, but it has all the other cultures are equal. And this is also to avoid some more prejudices. Also, speaking to your question about the hate speeches, I think if you are really know about the other cultures, you'll never speak like you did before, maybe in the question of hate.
Thank you so much for your answer. It was amazing having you, sir. I do have a follow-up question, but I guess we're too late for this.
Okay, so this is a new chance because I know that EU has the new chapter of Erasmus program also for other countries, not only EU countries. Yeah, so maybe it will be great opportunity to exchange staff or students, etc. From not only from in EU but also from countries outside EU. So, gentlemen, because Andrew and Yukti it is after the midnight in Rajasthan, so it is for me completely clear that they are completely tired. As probably some of us, but thank you very much for joining this session. Very inspiring presentation, speeches, and very good discussion. I'm sorry that we had to cut the discussion in one moment, but I'm afraid about human rights of Asian friends. So we had to decide to postpone this discussion on the end. And so once again, thank you very much. I can promise because before the session I talked with organizer. They sent certificates by mail, probably. If not, please give me a sign, and I promise that I will send to you, to all of you, certificates of attendance in this conference and this panel. Once again, thank you very much, and I hope that we will stay in touch and we will meet soon because we should also discuss in RC 26 dates of International Freedom of Expression Day and also International Refugees Day in June this year. But we should start to thinking about our guests, our speakers, etc. Yeah? So once again, thank you very much, and I hope that we will meet next time or very soon here because this is a beautiful place. And what is also interesting that here is, we can say, only or almost only 2 universities on the German side and Polish side, and some hotels and nothing else. So it's a good place for focusing on scientific work and scientific discussion. Yeah. So once again, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Oscar. Thank you, JJ. Thank you, Professor
Oscar.
Ratnam.
Thank you, Lan. Thank you for your speech. And
Thank you.
Once again, I'm sorry. So, okay, thank you very much. Bye. Thank you very much. Your speech was very inspiring for, as you saw, for all of us. And I thought that it should be the opening speech or presentation, like in our keynote speaker here. So it was a big privilege for me hosted you here in this panel.
Thank you very much for your words.
And it was very, very inspiring for also for me.
But since I have been living in different countries, also studying and working and teaching in different countries, that was always one of the main topics. You felt that now it was coming from my heart, how equal we are and what we could do to each other if we understand. It's not understand only, but we know how we are acting and speaking and feeling. If we would understand that, that would be something important for us, and that would.
And I hope that it was a very good society for your speech, because it was persons from different cultures, different continents, and
sure, we could have it as one of another topic for, let's say, another session to speak about the different cultures and how we can learn from each other. And most important, I think, that the young ones come have the chance to meet others. Only in your country, like you meet the Ukrainians here, and we have different people from different countries. It's not only exterior relations, but also internal relations.
Very, very important. Once again, thank you very much.
Thank you for your moderation.
Good speaking to you and to host in this panel. Thank you very much. I should.